Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita is leading a counter-revolution, a group of 20 states who are warning the Biden administration to drop its taxpayer-funded push for critical race theory. In a letter to Education Secretary Miguel Cardona, Rokita and 19 other AGs made it clear they don't appreciate the push to rewrite American history. And if it comes to the border of their states, they'll fight it every step of the way. Attorney General Rokita, thanks for your leadership, and thanks for joining us tonight on Pray Vote Stand.
Thanks for your leadership, Tony. I appreciate you having me on again.
Well, share with our viewers what you are leading other attorney generals to do and why.
And hey, I appreciate that. I guess I'm leading the letter. In my former life, I was a congressman and was chairman of the K through 12 Education Committee. So I happen to know how the department works a little bit about K through 12 education, and was co-author of a bill at the time that the Wall Street Journal lauded as the biggest devolution from the federal government to the states that they had seen on any bill on any subject in 25 years, and that was the Every Student Succeeds Act. So I come from that space of it, but I want to be very clear in that I'm really thankful to the other 19 states who joined. They're of course, are leaders in their own right. They saw the same things I saw, and so we wanted to place a marker down to this Biden administration education department that is nothing but a puppet master for this Marxist ideology that seeks to destroy the central civic institutions that have made America exceptional, that is unique to other nations in world history, for having the best ideas of self-governance that the world has ever seen. They're trying, like Marxists do, destroy those institutions. Now, instead of using economic class to do it like classic Marxism articulates, because we have capitalism and it's proven to work so well, and people jump from one economic class to another all the time, Tony. They had to switch their division. And so now they're using race and sex and other things like that to drive the Marxism. And so what our letter did was put that marker down that, hey, you guys keep trying to do this, and at least these 20 states are going to fight, and probably more. But more importantly, Tony, I think it's a letter that stands out for parents. Parents are finally getting engaged. Now, maybe parents who've listened to your show all these years have already been engaged, and maybe a lot of them homeschool and all that, and great. And however you can do it, not everyone has the same circumstances, but for the first time in a very, very long time, parents are thankfully engaged and concerned about their child's education. And so this letter stood up for them and say, you know what, as you go to the school board, as you go to demand to know what your child's curriculum is about and make sure it's proper, you're going to have the backing of at least these 20 states.
And that is encouraging to parents. In fact, a member of Congress, you didn't serve with her, Lauren Boebert, answers that question. She actually speaks to the critical role of what parents need to be doing. And I want to play that short clip of Congresswoman Lauren Boebert.
Show up to your school board meetings. Listen to what is taking place. Have an opinion on the curriculums that are being taught to our children. If you feel compelled, run for office. Be on the school board. That is the most important part of government, especially right now. Our children are so valuable. Their future is so valuable, and we cannot lose it to something like this racist, critical race theory.
General Rokita, would you agree with that?
You know, absolutely. I used to say when conservatives would come to me and say, hey, I want to run for office, I would say, you know, that's great. I appreciate you. The founders, designed this system for you to do exactly that as a citizen without needing or requiring specialty degrees or knowledge or anything. I mean, that's the beauty of what we have. But then I would say, you know what, go get your teaching license instead. Because this was before critical race theory and this new awakening we've had, because I always knew, having gone to 200 schools, over 200 schools in this country, that this is where we were losing the fight, is when we send our kids off to school for them to be indoctrinated. And now I say either get your teaching license or run for your local school board, because that's where the curriculum is being passed. That's where these teachers and these errant superintendents or arrogant principals go and pass this garbage, is through their local school board. And they usually do it on a consent agenda, which means they barely even take votes on it until the parents show up and demand the transparency. I'm not saying getting in fights with physical fights with anybody. I'm not saying show up with pitchforks. Show up with a genuine interest in a little bit of education on how the process works, and you will be great.
Show up armed with knowledge, and that's what we're doing here tonight. General Rokita, well, let me ask you this question. As you point out, this is not your first rodeo. You've been around a while as you worked on education in Congress. But let me ask you this question based upon your experience and your understanding of where we are in the timeline of history. How critical is this moment?
You know, it's hard for me to judge and know and say with any degree of authority. I'm just like you. But I think this is the most important point in our history. That, you know, every organization, whether it's a family unit, whether it's a country, at different intervals steps back and asks they take stock and they ask themselves, who are we going to be over the next period of time? You know, maybe for a family, it's at the Christmas, New Year's time, when we take stock of our blessings and what we have and focus on the next year. For America, I believe it was, you know, it's right now. It's after 200 years, we're saying, okay, who are we going to be for the next 200 years? Is it going to be like the last 200 with the innovation, prosperity, that 5,000-year leap, you know, that's described, that never happened before in world history? That's part of our American exceptionalism. Or are we going to be Europe, or you know, maybe even worse, Russia or China, or you know, what is our? I think, Tony, we're going through that exercise right now, and I hope we get it right. That's why I'm still in politics. People said I've been around too long, but that's why I'm still around, because I am not giving up this decision without fighting for it.
Nor should any of us. I think you're absolutely right. And this is a defining moment. I think you are correct. And the future will not be any better than what we invest in our children. And if we step back, occupied with, you know, important things, all these things that we are engaged in are important, but nothing should overshadow the future. And if we're not engaged in our children's education and not aware of the indoctrination that has been taking place but accelerating at present, well, we're not going to have much of a future. But the good news is, General Rokita, is I think, as you pointed out earlier, parents are paying attention. I think if there's a silver lining to the coronavirus, as parents were more engaged in what was happening through online education, they saw some of this indoctrination taking place.
Absolutely. And, you know, as much as we're fighting on numerous fronts, like you described, Tony, you know, the fact of the matter is this is really all related, right? So on one level, it's healthcare and how much government control we should have. And on one level, it's in the environment and the nonsense they're spewing about, the arrogance they're spewing really about, you know, to what degree humans can really change the climate to begin with, versus ocean currents, versus the elliptical around the sun, versus so many other factors. But on a common higher level, all of this, Tony, is about control over the individual. And that has been a fight we've waged since the beginning of mankind, where a small group of men decided they know how to run our lives better than we do as individuals. And that's the fight. Whether it's healthcare, the environment, this education, indoctrination, it's control over the individual. And that's what is so important to fight against. And that's what our founders so brilliantly got us away from. And I just won't lose that without fighting my heart out for us.
That is a fight, General Rokita, that we must continue to wage and never, ever surrender. Thank you for being a leader in that effort, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, General Todd Rokita, grateful for men and women like that are stepping up and leading out. All right, coming up next, a teacher who has spoken out about this indoctrination taking place in America's classrooms.